Hi, everyone. Welcome to a dystopian future where the fingerprints, photos, biometric features like voice and face recognition of immigrants and their families are integrated into a single tracking system, and all government law enforcement agencies have easy access. This discussion is part of the Media Justice and Athena Eyes on Amazon campaign, which is demanding that Amazon stop policing immigrants, workers, and our communities. In our neighborhoods, Amazon is helping expand policing and police surveillance through Amazon Ring. And for its almost 1 million warehouse workers and drivers, Amazon uses a police-like system to monitor, control, and discipline employees in order to maintain maximum speed. As a system, that leads to injuries, fear of using the restroom, and constant exhaustion and anxiety. And today we are going to talk about a Department of Homeland Security plan to build a $4.3 billion biometrics database hosted on Amazon Web Services, which will be used to further target and criminalize immigrants. I'm joined today by Jacinta Gonzalez from Mi Gente, Paramita Shah from Just Futures Law, and Mizue Azeki from Immigrant Defense Project, who are leading the research, advocacy, and activism to stop this. Before we get started, right now, as we speak, in Arlington, Virginia, immigrant rights activists from La Colectiva are in the streets demanding Arlington County cut ties with ICE. It's no coincidence that Arlington is home to Amazon's second headquarters. Amazon is moving to Arlington in order to get lucrative government contracts like the one we'll describe today. So while Amazon got $51 million in subsidies to locate in Arlington, it's also a partner of the police force that is criminalizing that community. You can support the effort to get ICE out of Arlington by following ICE out of Arlington and defund Nova Police online. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jacinta, Mizue, and Paramita to talk about the dystopian future and how to save it.
Thank you so much, Ryan. And hey, everybody, it's great to be here with all of y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Also want to shout out all of the folks in Arlington that are fighting to kick Amazon out. La Colectiva has been doing some amazing organizing for many, many years now. So it's really inspiring to see that fight also be happening under their leadership. And want to just encourage folks to support as much as you can. My name is Jacinta Gonzalez, as Ryan said. I'm a senior campaign organizer with Mi Gente. Mi Gente is a national political home, a membership organization of Latina and Chicana folks that are doing digital and grassroots organizing. And a lot of us at Mi Gente come out of deportation defense organizing for many, many years now. And through that deportation defense work, we've really been able to see how ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has been changing their strategies to surveil, identify, detain, and deport our communities. For many years, particularly under the Obama administration, we saw a lot of information being shared by local police, by local jails, state prisons with immigration. But we started to notice that as the years went by, ICE was doing more and more raids in our communities. They were going door to door, going to apartments, going to homes. They were going to workplaces, and they had a lot of information on us. They knew our names, they knew what cars we were driving, they knew who our family was, where we worked. And not all of that information was coming from local police. So Paramita, Mizu, and I came together and actually started to do some corporate research to map out who are the companies that are giving information to immigration to be able to conduct these raids. So back in 2018, we put out a report called Who's Behind ICE, the tech and data companies fueling deportations, where we started to map out how ICE was using information. And we realized a couple of things. One, that there's these things called data brokers, which are companies that buy and sell private information that had millions and millions of dollars of contracts with ICE. So that's how ICE was getting our addresses. That's how they were getting records from the Office of Motor Vehicles or the DMV in your area. That's how they were getting information about our medical bills or utility bills. But as ICE had all of that information being sold to them by companies like Thomson Reuters and LexisNexis, they also needed to analyze all of that information. So in comes companies like Palantir, right? A company that has been working with the military and the CIA for years, decided to custom make software for ICE to be able to process all of this information. And so they had huge files on people. But you know who was helping them store all of that information? It was Amazon, right? So we actually were able to uncover that Amazon in many ways is the backbone to a lot of policing agencies, including ICE, including the FBI, because they provide the cloud storage that they need to be able to surveil our communities and create files on them. And so we've been fighting Amazon, we've been fighting Palantir, we've been fighting Thomson Reuters. But as time has gone on, we've also started to realize that the Department of Homeland Security now wants to have even more information, not only on immigrants, not only on people in the United States, but people internationally as well. They want to know our DNA. They want to know our voice. They want to know our hair. They want to know our palm prints, our iris scans. They want to know how we walk, who we talk to, and all of this information they want it on one single database. And so the HEART database is right now being built up. Many companies have gotten millions of dollars to experiment and try to build up this database. But what we do know is that the cloud provider is going to be Amazon once again. So, Amazon as a company is making millions, if not billions of dollars off of offering, the government cloud services that are actually harming communities in really, really horrible ways. And so today you'll learn a little bit more about what the HEART database is, why it's so intrusive, why it's going to be so problematic, and how it's going to be very intrusive in all of our lives. But also because it's being built, we have a lot of opportunities to go in and fight it, right? The deal is not done. It has not been implemented yet. And so this is one of those places where we can actually go in and make sure that the new administration, the new Department of Homeland Security hears from us about why this is wrong, and also companies understand why they should not be building it or supporting it with their cloud services. So with that, I'll pass it over to Palomita, to Mizue, sorry, to just explain what HEART is, why it's so horrible, and then we'll pass it back over to Palomita.
Thanks, Jacinta. So I am going to talk a little bit about what HEART is, and then Palomita is going to talk about how we're fighting it. So that will be the exciting part. So I'm going to share my screen here just to do a quick slideshow. You guys can see this eyeball. Yeah. Okay. So as Jacinta mentioned, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, is in the process of building this massive biometrics database, which is HEART. And really what this means is next level, taking DHS's surveillance capabilities to a pretty dystopian and scary level, right? So right now, what ICE or DHS relies upon is a database called IDENT, and IDENT has been around, I think, for about 25 years. And what it started with fingerprints, and they've more recently added face and iris scans. But as you can see, what HEART would do is not only increase the number of biometrics that are in the database, including palm prints, as it says, scars, tattoos, voice prints, even DNA, but it's also going to bring a lot more processing power and analytic capabilities to the Department of Homeland Security. And so some studies say we'll even include things other like political affiliations, religious activities, relationship patterns, and it's going to make it much easier or possible for ICE and the DHS and CBP to track people in real time, right? So this is tracking people at protests, where they go to church, who they hang out with, where they work, as well as the ability for ICE to track people, as Jacinta mentioned, in ICE raids and their deportation policing practices. And so let's talk a little bit about what HEART is. Let's see. So HEART kind of emerges in this moment of just a biometrics collection explosion all over the world, right? So we all, we know about facial recognition and police using that very commonly and increasingly in the United States. In US military has been collecting iris scans in Afghanistan and in Iraq for decades. And so, the Department of Defense has their biometrics database, right? The FBI, of course, has their own biometrics database and a DNA database. And so does DHS. And what HEART is going to be doing is, as you can see from this list of data providers, it's merging all these different sources of data with very clear, I mean, tremendous analytical power for whoever is accessing it, to be able to, analyze a whole bunch of different biometric information and personal information, expanding the reach of the surveillance state tremendously. And so, part of the thing about HART is it's US domestic agencies, the military, but also, as you can see, foreign governments as well. And this is just the beginning. So where we are right now, and the other thing, sorry, I should just say about HART is, there's still a lot of questions about it, things that we don't know in terms of, how is it that people are going to even know that their information is stored inside HART? And also, the office that's holding HART that I think Paramita is going to talk about, OBIM, is basically the manager of this data, but they're not the ones that are holding it, right? So it's unclear in terms of the privacy risks or, data and civil liberty impacts, who's, the accuracy and the quality of the data, but also in terms of the oversight of the process. And so this just came out recently in a report showing how when you encounter the CBP at an airport, say, or otherwise, the way that HART works, you're seeing how the Border Patrol assesses your travel documents, then they initiate some search that's going to go through HART to pre-verify if you're in the database. If you're not in the database, then they're going to collect more biometrics and submit it to HART again to see if there's any match in there. And then HART's going to search other databases to see if they can figure out who you are. The Border Patrol agent's going to make an assessment, and then all that data is going to be stored. Where we are right now with HART is, it was, I guess the vision for it came started in 2016. The implementation, right now we're in the stage of the first increment. And you can see how they're staging it out in 4 increments and building in each one, building these, expanding the capabilities, right? So you can see how by the end of the process, these additional biometric modalities will be searchable, and I think the analytic capabilities will be fully developed. I hope that all made sense. And I'm going to turn it over to Paramita.
Hey, so in keeping, thanks Ms. Wei, and thanks Hasita, in keeping with our dystopic journey, there is a story behind HART, and HART is really about replacing this old legacy biometric system that they had before called IDENT. And IDENT was really kind of like the way that immigrants have been processed through our immigration system for decades, actually. It's a 27-year-old system, and HART was really supposed to be the replacement for this system. And I don't think any of us realized the scale and scope of HART until the last 8 months or so, because it was always registered as a line item in Congress's budget. It was always given a $180 million price tag. And we were surprised because, when it came to DHS's budget or ICE's budget, there's just a lot of mystery. What is actually, where am I going to find how they're collecting DNA? Who are the companies behind it? It's just really, really hard to unpack, very hard to untangle. And so the frustration about HART, that I have is also frustration. It's been very hard to get information about how is this whole system being built and implemented. And so just very recently, actually 2 days ago, there was a GAO report came out, and GAO is this government agency that kind of provides some assessments about government agency programs. And I'm also going to share my screen here. And what we found out from here is that, it kind of verified that, you know, HART, when it was conceived of really and being thought of being deployed was in 2016. And the first increment, as Ms. Wei said, was supposed to come out in 2019. It was conceived as this $5.8 billion program, right? And it confirmed this idea that DHS really wanted to move away from data centers to a cloud-based environment, which we already know. And when they started building HART in May 2019, they're like, oh, we're going to get $2 billion in savings because we can move to the cloud. And that's what came out in this GAO report. But what also came out in this GAO report was a few things, is that these savings costs were misrepresented, that there has been huge cost overruns in HART, questionable contracting practices, how are they clocking time between this legacy system and HART, and that really we're not looking, there was no system that was deployed, no first increment that came out, that it's expected to come out in December 2021. And that made this program even seem more troubling and really kind of like imbued with a lot of problems. Because not only is Amazon supporting this massive overhaul of biometrics within DHS, shifting it from really what was kind of like taking information to a full-on biometrics agency. Not only are they assisting with that, but they also are just okay, I think, being the backbone of a lot of these programs within DHS that are really racked with these problems. And so I think, you know, the problems with HART are really ingrained from I think a program level, but also like a money problem, in that it's really an issue. But yet, sadly, the Biden budget this year does want to increase funding for HART. And so they're increasing it, just this line item by HART by another 50%. And so you can see that even though there are all these problems, this kind of data shows that we're kind of moving in this direction, that HART is really the focus of this administration's desire to reach like these new biometric capabilities. I think one last thing is that there is an opportunity, and maybe Jacinta can go into other opportunities later, but the Biden budget is supposed to be decided by September 30th, 2021. And the fact that they continue to fund HART, that they're not willing to put a pause on the program, knowing what it does, I think gives a pass not only to the contractors behind it, which include contractors like Northrop Grumman, a military defense contractor, which is building this system. It was contracted to build the system at $95 million and is now way beyond that. It looks like it's been charging about $143 million. You know, they continue to pump money into HART, even though it has these really fundamental problems right now. And I think there is an opportunity, I think, to weigh in, at least with members of Congress, to ask questions as to why members of Congress continue to fund something. And why does Amazon continue to kind of back this system and provide cloud services to something so massive when it's clearly so horribly managed and horribly run? I'm going to turn it over to Jacinta.
Yeah, so we just wanted to sort of, we know that there's sort of this short-term opportunity to fight back with the battle around appropriations that Palomita just laid out. But we kind of just wanted to let folks know that we are working on a report that's going to lay out all of this info and more, that's going to be coming out in the next couple of months, that will have graphics, that will have information that we can be sharing with our membership, that we can be sharing with different bases. So that is going to be coming, right? So kind of like letting people know that that's a preview of some materials and some tools that are going to be coming up, that will also kind of outline what are ways that we can fight, particularly knowing that a lot of these companies have been, as Palomita was saying, screwing up on building this, right? So we actually have a lot of ways to push the administration to actually say we should be shutting this down and not building it up. So if folks want to get more information on that, if folks want to be updated, you can go to the notechforice.com website. We'll put it right now in the comments. We'll put it in the chat. Folks can go there, sign up to the listserv, and you'll be able to, one, receive the HART report when we come out with it, but also receive all of the action alerts that we're going to be coming up with in the next couple of months to be able to figure out ways of pushing back. But in the meantime, continue to have eyes on Amazon. We know that a lot of what's happening right now is that we have to be pushing back against these companies that are building these things up. Just yesterday we had a shareholder resolution against a different company, Thomson Reuters, that is one of the main data brokers. But we actually got 71% of independent shareholders agree with us that having any sort of business with ICE was bad for the company's reputation, and that they should be actually really thinking about the human rights impacts of what's happening. And so we have to continue to put pressure on these companies so that they so they actually feel the risk of having contracts with not only these agencies, but building up these surveillance tools like HART. So please, notechforice.com, go sign up, and that way you'll be able to receive the report when it comes out and be kind of in tune for all of the action alerts.
Great, thanks guys. So I'm just gonna ask a couple of questions and then we'll wrap it up. But from Amazon's perspective, what they've said is like, look, we're just providing a service, we're just servers, but that really hides a kind of dangerous reality, which is that Amazon Web Services enables a level of cheap and scalable computing that the world's really never seen before. It's one of the most powerful tech machines that we've ever known. So what does it really mean when you have one of the world's most powerful corporations offering itself to DHS cheaply? What does it change?
I think having Amazon as a backbone for so much of DHS's operations allows DHS to hide behind Amazon, as a way to say that we're doing things efficiently, we're doing these things properly. And you can even see that in some of the budget documents that have come out, that these are decreasing costs, we're improving efficiencies. They use fancy words like we're mitigating against mission failure risk. These are all I think it's all code to say that, cloud services is the way to go, and they never look at what they're doing in HART, right? Amazon doesn't care what HART is doing. It doesn't care about the manner in which this data is collected. It doesn't have a human rights oversight system, and neither does DHS. So, when DHS, kind of says that they're using best practices, they're just using, they're bottom lining, based on money, how they're going to get a system that creates enormous harm. And Amazon, therefore, is just in this ability to sit there and say that we can be partners and kind of trade accountability and blame. DHS can blame Amazon for its problems, and Amazon can blame DHS for its failures. I think it's a really twisted system in that way.
Yeah, I would also just say, Ryan, to this question is one of the things that we found out in the Who's Behind ICE report is that since about 2010, Amazon started investing a lot of funding in hiring lobbyists in DC. And so this whole idea that Amazon Web Services should be the cloud service provider, that they're safe, that they're the ones that are doing all of the fancy words that Palomita just laid out, it actually comes from one, marketing, and two, lobbyists, right? That's where the theory is coming from. And that's why also Amazon has so many more FedRAMP authorizations, which are sort of the fancy permits that they have to get to be able to provide cloud services to the government. Companies like Google have 30 something, and companies like Amazon have over 200, right? And so what we start to see is same as the way that they're trying to monopolize the market in other places, they're trying to do the same thing with cloud services for the government. because they know it's really lucrative, right? Not only are they not paying taxes, not only are they not actually paying their fair share, they're lining their own pockets with our tax dollars. And they know that the place where they're going to be able to get as many of our tax dollars as possible is if they actually market themselves as cloud service providers for the police, for the military. So, you know, they're sort of doing this thing where they're making the case for why these services are necessary to then get the funds to then build up the machine and then actually become essential, right? There's a couple of cities in California that actually tried to say, you know what, we're so upset with what Amazon is doing that we're going to try to ban Amazon in our city. And they realized they couldn't, because if they did, they wouldn't be able to provide some housing services and they wouldn't be able to provide some health services. And so this is sort of the way where through the back door, Amazon is coming in, again, using lobbyists, using local government to kind of market themselves as necessary, create this infrastructure. And then once they have people locked in, they start to raise their prices. And again, that's where tax money is going while they're not paying any. And so we really start to see how these companies are starting to like amass that type of power going off of marketing and going off of lobbyists. So that's, you know, it's just an important thing to just kind of mark and understand about how they're navigating politics and how they're like promoting the services that they have, trying to make a buck.
And I just want to add one thing, you know, Department of Homeland Security as an institution is relatively new historically, right? So it's not even 20 years old yet. And one of the things when they first got founded, ICE had this strategic document, Operation Endgame, where they made really clear, like their goal was not only to deport as many people as they could, but they needed to be able to identify them and track them, right, in order to arrest them and deport them. And they made very clear that information technology and these kind of systems were what they called mission critical. And they say this all the time, right? So like the data brokers that Jacinta talked about, they're mission critical because they need those people to gather as much data as they can on people, right? And Palantir also is, you know, provides that analytical service that ICE knows it can't complete its mission of like maximum kind of surveillance and ability to target people where they see fit without these kind of services, right? And so, you know, part of what, as Paramita said, like the limitations of having a system that's 25 years old, developed back in the 1990s, right? That only has like a few biometric modalities. I'm sure it's like clunky as hell in many ways. There's no way you can separate a corporation like Amazon from the ability to do this kind of really massive scale surveillance and rapid processing and storing of like an unimaginable amount of information on millions and millions of people.
Can you all talk a little bit about the choice that we're making when we invest $4.3 billion in a tracking system like this versus the other kinds of choices we could be making, and the sort of political, social calculus behind that?
Yeah, I mean, for us, one of the things that we saw in this budget that's incredibly alarming is that Biden is investing even more money than Trump did in DHS, right? In ICE and Border Patrol. And so that's really concerning on a lot of levels, but HART is just one more component of that. A lot of times policing agencies, whether it's, you know, ICE or your local police department, like to pretend that these technologies, whether it's like having data brokers or having a database or being able to have facial recognition technology, are quote unquote improving policing and making it, you know, nicer and friendlier and less intrusive. But what we know is it's actually just giving more money to police departments and it's giving more power to the police to go after our communities. And so databases like the HART database just make things worse. It's actually giving ICE agents much more power because, again, whatever information they put in these databases, they can use however you want, but you're never going to be able to go in there and defend yourself or understand or limit what information they have. And so it's actually just giving a lot of police departments a way to go around what limited constitutional protections we've had, right? It's actually their way of being able to go around it. So for us, it's really scary because, I mean, what could we do with $4 billion? We could do a lot, right? That's money that could be invested in actually creating services for immigrant communities. That's money that could be created to invest in health and education and all of the things that we're fighting for. And so what we see time and time again is when we're in DC, demanding that they actually pass legislation that would protect workers or asking them to actually provide a pathway to citizenship. Oh no, then it's too expensive. Then we don't know where to find the funding. But when it's like giving military contractors a couple $billion to experiment with a new way of surveilling us, all of a sudden they have a blank check where they're like, oh, well, maybe it's 3.5 billion, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 7. It really doesn't matter. We just have to try to get out there and do this. And so I think, again, this is why it's so dangerous when you have private companies that are part of that, because as soon as they see that, they start to make up arguments about why you have to give them more money. And so you give ICE agents more power, you give private companies and military contractors more investment, and once again, communities that are on the ground that actually have been asking for basic investments in infrastructure and in human services that would actually benefit communities, there's never seems to be enough funding for that.
I think another thing in terms of, there's this billions of dollars, but it's also restructuring the economy to basically create these corporate driven and military driven and police driven solutions. So, people say, for example, like biometrics, as I mentioned before, it's a massive industry now, right? So you have refugees need to submit their iris scans to get their food rations, or, digital ID systems in places like India based on biometrics and fingerprints and iris scans. And then the problem isn't that people need a digital ID, right? Or that they need to have their biometrics stored. It's like people need food, or they need some way to maybe access it. And so I think part of the other challenge that we face is, like, as the technology industries and military industries kind of get their hooks or tentacles into kind of the immigration policing system, it's like creating these other structures and these other logics of, like, these are now the solutions that we have to fight, right? Like, every single person in the world has to be cataloged based on like 5 different invasive biometric unique identifiers. And I think that that's a political challenge in addition to what Jacinta said. Paramita, did you want to say something?
No, I also think it's like we're sinking all that money into failed program. Like, there's nothing here that says that this should be an investment that we've made. We've never really, I think it's scary when we've started investing in these programs that the public has never had a chance to look at, and that continues to be a problem with all these powerful tech tools and powerful databases, is, we still haven't had a public conversation. But yet the only people who are profiting from this is Amazon. The only people who profit from this is Northrop Grumman. And we haven't really talked about what it means to, like, pretend this is all open data when it's really our data and our stories that's like living in a database, and they're making up our copy digital lives. And we have no way to look at it. And it always shocks me that, that in a $200 billion data broker industry, that's only going to grow when you have, one of the biggest government on the planet investing in something like HART. So it's designed to link up with other governments. It's designed to link up with other federal agencies. So this isn't really just a story of $4.3 billion. This is a story, to me, of billions of dollars of biometric, databases that will now be funded, because of a relationship with HART,
So I wonder if you could talk about the rationale that's often given for these things. I mean, often we point to the, like, immigrants who have committed crimes as the reason that we need to invest like this amount of money in these systems. It's similar to Amazon building the world's largest surveillance empire to deal with package theft or so-called package theft. How do we fight back against that narrative, the scapegoating of a few people?
I think there's multiple challenges here, Ryan, that you're pointing to. Part of what we're seeing is a convergence of a lot of different interests in terms of biometric collection, right? Like I had said, there's like national ID systems that need a more efficient way to distribute services, and they say it combats fraud. You have these migrant control systems, the whole premise of the Department of Homeland Security, right, was the war on terror, right? And then it kind of evolves to become like, actually, we're concerned about trafficking. We're concerned also about drugs. We're concerned about human trafficking. And then it's about, these criminality of immigrants and that kind of thing. And I think part of the challenge of fighting back is deconstructing the logic, understanding kind of this is a carceral system that's a form of social control. And also identifying the spaces in which you can fight and build campaigns that allow you to expose what we see as kind of the truth, or how these logics or narratives are a mask for it. And I think, that was the thing, was Jacinta mentioned, like, we kind of started talking about this and putting this out there under Trump, right? Where there was a lot of interest then in terms of like, oh, we can see that actually, because it's so blatantly just racist and xenophobic, that must be something that we have to figure out how to oppose it. And I think the challenge right now for the Biden moment is to basically, break through the narrative that's going to become more honed in, just like on the Obama days of felons, not families, right? That this system is okay because we're actually targeting only the really most dangerous people. And so that's part of the work that we are continuing to do. And Jacinta?
Yeah, no, just plus one to a lot of the things that Ms. Ua laid out. And I think that there's a lot of places where we have to fight back against this rhetoric, or this pitting one group of folks against another. The administration, the government, a lot of folks have been very invested in this idea of like immigrants who are worthy of protection and immigrants who are not, right? And I think the thing that's really dangerous about that is obviously how it comes up in policy, how it comes up in who people fight for, but also how companies decide to then adapt that into their marketing, right? So again, as Ms. was saying, like, so many times whenever everyone talks about some of these technologies, it's like child exploitation, right? Child sex trafficking. And so they use these words as ways of actually making sure that people are not talking about policing, to get people to actually like back away from having these conversations because people are too afraid about the controversy of it. And so for us, it's actually been even more important to go in, but also expose the lies of the differences in terms of like what they say their mission is and what they're actually doing, right? Constantly people are saying, well, Homeland Security investigations, right, which is one of the branches of ICE, they're doing the hard things. They're actually protecting us. They're actually helping public safety. And it's like, yeah, by what? Arresting 700 workers at a poultry plant in Mississippi, right? That's who they deem as, criminals, because they were working without documents. And so there is also a conversation to be had about how they're trying to expand criminalization in a lot of ways, because again, it's good for business. If you can make arguments about why all of these people should be criminally charged and why they should be locked up in addition to being deported, right? You're going to have more interest in investment in these systems. And so I think we both have to push back against the rhetoric on multiple levels, but we also have to push back against the mythologies that they're putting out as part of their marketing that's actually just harming communities and trying to expand the carceral state.
So just to wrap up, for folks, we have Prime Day coming up, or Amazon has Prime Day coming up on June 21st and 22nd. That's the time when workers are under increased pressure. If you want to support that work, follow Eyes on Amazon for actions you can take. And then Jacinta, I just want you to say like one more time where people can find more information about HEART and follow the actions you all are taking.
Yeah, so if folks want to have more information in general about what are the tech and data companies that are supporting immigration and customs enforcement and surveilling, detaining, and deporting folks, you can go to notechforice.com. You can sign up there to be part of the listserv. But there's also a ton of reports there that Palomita, Mizu, and I have worked on together, including the Who's Behind ICE report. There's a bunch of graphics, there's videos, there's a comic strip, right? If you are like, this shit is really complicated, I don't know how to explain it to my base or to my cousin or like whatever, we have a comic strip, we have a workshop guide. There's a lot of tools out there that can help in the organizing. If you are, you know, a student on a campus and know that Northrop Grumman is trying to recruit people on your campus and you want to push back, there's a toolkit there for you. If you're trying to figure out how you can limit your local police department from sharing information with some of these big databases, there's a policy toolkit there for you. So there's a lot of good resources there that folks can kind of plug into. And yeah, just stay tuned. We are now publicly committing to coming up with this report on HEART in the next couple of months. So now we're on the hook. We've said it's coming. Now we have to make sure it does. So that will be coming out this summer. With as well some graphics and other things that will hopefully explain it for folks so that we can gear up for the fight ahead.
Great. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Thanks, Paramita, Mizui, and Jacinta, as always. Great to talk with you.
Thank you for having us. It was a lot of fun.